Hey everybody, this is Dean and welcome to Photo Blue. Today I thought I'd show you how to use the new Noiseless AI plugin for Luminar Neo. To start with, if we go up here to where the plugins are, it will show you, I already have the Noiseless installed here, but if you don't have it installed already, this is where you would install it. You have to buy a license to it. There are a couple of choices. I won't get into that. You can go to the website and find that out. But if you have Noiseless, this is where you install it. Also, there are more plugins coming out. There's Upscale to mess with the resolution of an image to make it a higher resolution for larger prints. And then there's AI background removal, which is kind of an advanced tool. These are all what they call pro tools. So some of these features are already in Luminar Neo, but these are more advanced of the same features. So if you like any of the particular features, you can get these plugins. You may not need them all. You may need some of them. You may not need any of them for your needs, just to let you know. All right, so I took this photograph particularly to demonstrate noise removal and to test noise removal in editing programs. So it's really grainy here, but I'm also going to blow it up a little bit so we can see the grain a little better. You can see it's really grainy here. So normally, hopefully, you don't get photographs like this, but you may be in situations where you do get some or a lot like this. But you always want to try to reduce the noise as much as possible when you're shooting, and then the tool is more effective the less noise there is, obviously. I'm going to go to develop up here first, because there's a noise reduction in here, and as I said, this is kind of the non-pro noise reduction. So you can adjust the luminosity noise and the color noise, and there's a boost thing right here. So that's just something to be aware of. It is already in there, so you may not need the tool, or might not need the tool that much, or you might be able to get away with the tool in development. But the noiseless one is much better than the one that's kind of in here by default, because it gives you some more choices. So if we go to this, you see it recommends that we use a high adjustment for this particular photo, which doesn't surprise me since this is about as noisy as I could get the picture to be. So you have low, middle, and high, which is where you start out with. And then you have these sliders down here for luminosity, color denoise, and details and sharpness. So I'm gonna hit high here to just start out with, and it's going to do its little calculation right here. All right, so it did some default adjustments on high here, and if we click to the preview, this is the original image, and this is the image with the adjustment. So you can see it did a really good job on there. But the nice thing about this is that it has a lot of adjustments here. And these adjustments, for example, detail, what happens when it denoises stuff a lot of times is it will actually, it will make the photograph less clear, and depending on what the photograph is and how large you want to blow it up, sometimes that's acceptable. And so we can move it around. So if we move it to get more details, it's a little more grainy and less detail. It's blurred it more, and it looks a little less natural. Denoising is just like when you sharpen a picture with an editing program. What happens is if you apply the effect too much, it can look unnatural. So you don't want to go to the extreme limit. You want to use just enough to make the photograph acceptable to you for your uses. And I would always suggest to zoom in and to zoom out to see how it looks. So give it a second here. You see, it gets grainy for a second because this is kind of a preview of it until we export it. So that's what it looks like with low details. If we move the details up a little bit, it gets a little bit more detail in it. The sharpness is similar. We can move the sharpness up and down on it. So we can adjust these two. These two sliders are really the main things in this program or this plugin that really gives you a lot of control over the detail. And it's, like I said, it's very similar to when you're focusing stuff. When you focus it, it gets a little bit too sharp. It's sharpening the edges, for example, when you're trying to sharpen a photograph. And so then when you use a sharpening filter, a lot of times it will look it won't look real. It will be a little bit too sharp, so you have to play with that. And same thing with the noiseless filter here. So one thing I want to show you, let's go over here, is a difference between luminosity denoise and color denoise. By default, this program actually takes out some of the color denoise. You can see by default it's set to 50. So it's actually doing some filtration on it already. If we bring that down to 0, you can see all these colors in here. The red, the green, and the blue show up, and that's what's called the color noise on it. When you see spots like that, if we take this denoise up for the color denoise and get rid of that, and then increase the luminosity, you'll see those tend to be like white dots. So we can move those up and down and adjust that as well on this. So just having this plugin in, it will kind of filter out the color noise automatically on it, or at least to some low level. So it starts to filter out some of the worst noises, basically what is happening. This is a raw image file, and whenever you're viewing a raw image file, the editor is putting some sort of base settings on it by default that you can take off. A lot of times also we'll do some sort of correction for the lens, which you could also take off, but by default a lot of editors automatically take care of certain kind of default things for you, just as a caveat, or just to let you know. So you can actually take some of those things off, like we can take the color denoise off, which typically we wouldn't want to do unless you're going for a particular effect where you have color noise. So you can see as I move that down, we get more color noise in here. So basically, if we set this on high again, and let's move this back up, this color denoise filter back up, and these filters back up here, you can mess with these two luminosity denoise levels probably first, and then what you want to do is you want to go in and look at the detail and the sharpness and move these back and forth until you get an image where it's not too grainy and it's not too blurry. Basically, the more detail you have, the more grainy it gets, and the sharper you have it, the grainier it will get. And the less sharp, the less grainy, and the less detailed, the less grainy. So you'll want to mess with those settings. So if we blow this up a little bit so we can see a little bit better here, and we go, you can see when I move the details way up, it gets more grainy here. But if I move the details way down, it's less grainy, but a little less sharp. And the same goes for the sharpness. If I move the sharpness up, I probably have to move it up here so that you can see it. As I move the sharpness up and down, you can see it gets a little more or less grainy. But the details tend to make the most difference, it looks like, in the grainy in this, whereas the sharpness puts a little more grain, but it's sharpening it a little more than it's adding details or grain. So that's how you use the Noiseless AI extension in Luminar Neo. I'm Dean, and this has been PhotoBlue, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like.